Okay, so we now have some user flows. The product's coming to life. Are we ready to do the prototype?
We are all usually chomping at the bit to get into like, how do we take it to the next step? But the one thing I would advise for teams to do at this point is you have your user flow, you've gotten your feedback, maybe you've made some refinements, but now that you got some detail that you can look at, we place some emphasis here on testing your assumptions. So in order to test your assumptions, you have to identify them.
Yeah.
So your user flow is a great way to start to reveal those assumptions. One trick that we learned a while ago is to state your assumptions in the positive. By doing that, it's easier to test them. So if, looking back to some of our earlier episodes of this podcast where we're talking about risk, we had 4 lenses of looking at risk, and that's exactly how we start to look at the assumptions. When I look at this flow, there are assumptions about value. There's assumptions about usability. When I say value,
is somebody going to want it?
Yeah, that somebody's going to want it. Or we could say, like a therapist will value this feature because it will help them save time. And so, or we may say usability, that when a patient sees their end session report, or like when they're done with their exercises, they're going to understand what that report is telling them.
Yeah. So that's an important theme to keep in mind. Throughout the entire process, we're trying to reduce risk. We're always keeping in mind these key areas of risk. Folks can go back and listen to that episode where we really dive into those 4 areas of risk. But everything we're doing is a test, right? We're testing assumptions, we're testing hypotheses, and we're trying to reduce those risks by bringing more insight to the party.
Exactly. And, you're going to generate a lot of assumptions.
Yeah.
And so you can look at it and say like, well, we're assuming that users are going to want this, that they're going to know how to use it, that maybe it's a feasibility risk, that this can be built to work this way. Maybe there's a business viability risk, that the business can support this flow, or that they can do the things that they need on their end to keep this moving. You'll generate a lot of assumptions, and that's not a bad thing. As a team, what you want to do is go through and find the critical assumptions. That's the key.
Okay, so you're always prioritizing assumptions.
Yeah,
you're always trying to
prioritize
hit your most risky assumptions, I guess.
Yeah, and
relevant ones.
The way we look at it is you're looking at what is most important. What is most relevant to the success of the software, and what is the evidence that we have that this is actually going to be true?
Right.
And where you see that those two come together, like this is super important and we have 0 evidence that people want this or that we can build it. Those are the critical assumptions that you want to test. So, if you have 50 assumptions identified, what you're looking for, like the 5 or 6 that are those like leap of faith assumptions that we're hinging the success of this product on these assumptions. So rather than just jump into a build, are there some simple tests that we could start to create? And that's where prototyping kind of comes in, is once you have your assumptions identified, then what's the appropriate form to prototype to get some of that evidence that you otherwise don't have?